Hey guys, welcome back. So, we're getting close to 2,000 subs. I have to thank everybody for all the time and the effort they put into keeping this going. So I'm going to turn the camera on and talk to Casper, but I'm going to actually talk to you guys. So, let me get this flipped around. This could be a little bit of double feature, a big thank you, and then also a quick rundown of a couple of things that I would call first steps importance on your 6.5. So I've had this truck for about a decade now. November 4th, it came home from the junkyard. I traded a 52 Chevy truck 1 ton and my parts 54 Chevy for it. I needed something to drive in college. And Howard at Dundee Truck and Trim knew that I like these dumb 6.5s. So he called me and he said, I got this white truck for you. I bought it, took it to my friend Josh's house. He and I put a transmission in it, brakes on it, a couple other things. And I drove it. Well, I was short on change a year and a half later to pay tuition, so I sold the truck to a lady about 15 minutes away, and she hauled her horse trailer with it. Unfortunately, a giant tree fell in a storm at Sherry's house, and it dropped it on the roof. And Casper sat there until that fall, and I stopped one day and asked if she needed a hand cleaning up the tree, and if she needed a hand get things picked up. And she said, yeah. So I went ahead and I swung over and cut the tree up. My other buddy, Josh Roach, not Josh Hasensall. And we picked up all the firewood, got everything cleaned up. And she called me basically night before Christmas Eve and said, come get your truck back. So I bought it. And this truck has been everything great that they should ought to be. I have daily driven it, drag raced it. I've driven it to holiday parties. I've driven it all over the state of Michigan. I've had it all over Indiana, Ohio, across multiple states, and it has done absolutely fantastic. I've raced it at King of the Streets. I've raced it at UCC. I've sled pulled it at KOS. I've done a lot of things with this truck. It brought me some of my closest friends. It brought me couple of people that don't like me too much, and that's okay too. But GSC is about trying to help other people out. GSC is about trying to give you guys content and information about 6.5 liter turbo diesels, Viola, that's 6.5 diesel, that other people didn't give. And that's kind of the platform that I designed GSC off of, was to talk about things like this, the S300 and upper intakes and all these other parts. But I wouldn't have been able to do this and make GSC a living thing if it weren't for my parents, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my family that all stood behind me and watched me do this stuff. My best friends, they all, I couldn't have done it without them. So yes, I need all you viewers to continue coming up with questions that I can try to answer or content you want to see. But I owe it to all of those people that stood behind me and watched me take an IDI diesel and try to do something crazy with it, which, quite frankly, I've done some pretty crazy shit with this truck. Pardon my French. But it's been a good time. I seriously wouldn't trade it for the world. I've lost a couple of friends over the years that couldn't beat their demons, and I've gained other friends that needed a hand either towing things or driving, racing, etc. And if I didn't have the backing support sitting up in the tower at the racetrack from Charles Posh of Sidetracked, if I didn't have the support in the pits when I go walking through and I see Eric Merchant of Merchant Automotive and his team, or Tony Burkhart and his boys Tyler and Seth, I would not be where I'm at today without these guys. They're some of the heaviest hitters in the D-Max business, and they have been nothing short of great people. They're kind, they're willing to help, and they've taught me a lot. So I'm passing this knowledge of the 6.5 on to you because of these people. I got to thank Charles for all the times that he gets on and makes fun of me for having a 6.5 sometimes, but I know he supports the heck out of it. I know my brother is the biggest support I've got at the end of the track, my dad, my mom. So I do this for me because I enjoy it and I love the challenge. But I also do it for you for free content because it helps you guys out. So thank you to everybody. We're almost 2,000 subs. This thing's going to go down the track in the end of July. We're going to sled pull with it. We're going to put this locker to good use, and we're also going to see if these HSP traction bars still got it and they're not going to tweak or bend, which looking at them, I highly doubt it. So I appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Keep up with the great questions, comments, and let's flip this thing over and talk about some of the basics. Thank you. All right, if you're buying your 6.5, you can see down below there's a pulley, and then there's a balancer behind it. You need to be checking that harmonic balancer because the rubber will deteriorate, fall apart, and then you find yourself in a bit of a bind because you end up with a broken balancer, which then can ruin your crankshaft and hurt the engine. So make sure that you look into that in the future. Worthwhile is a fluid damper. Yes, they're $500, but I won't run one of these trucks without one at this point. So fluid damper, that's number one or number two. Number one though, oil cooler lines. Go get the Leroy Diesel oil cooler line kit. I've had these things on this truck since 2015. Actually, it might have been before that. Get them because the stock oil cooler lines are similar to what you see there with the power steering cooler lines, and those couplers will dry rot, pop, and the next thing you know, you've got engine oil all over under the ground, under the truck, and not in the oil pan, and you end up with a rod knock. A friend of mine just went through that, unfortunately, and they lost the engine in the truck. So be sure to check your oil cooler lines frequent, and if you see a leak, replace them. Do not sit around and wait for that. Another thing that I would suggest doing, take the time, put brand new GM AC Delco thermostats in it. Do yourself a solid and get a Leroy Diesel fuel filter assembly and get the Feed the Beast mod. It does help a little bit. Another thing is Zombie Solutions / Leroy Diesel. Go out and get the lift pump relay harness. It is worth its weight in gold because if you're not getting fuel pressure up to the injection pump, example A, then there's a pretty good chance that you're robbing yourself of power, fuel economy, and also damaging the fuel injection system. So that's another thing that I highly recommend doing. Totally worth doing. Intercooler is totally up to you. If you want to do one, do it. If not, don't. It's not everybody's cup of tea because they're not very easy to just bolt in these trucks. GM did not intend for it. So I have videos on that. I have videos on the balancer swap. I have a video on the lift pump relay. So that way you guys can see what you've got going on. I somewhere have footage for doing the Feed the Beast mod, but I have no idea where it is. So that's one that I'm going to have to do over in the future because I currently don't have even the slightest clue where the video went. Another thing that's totally worth doing, turbo swap. Ignore the fact that I don't have an HX on this anymore. It's a Borg Warner S300. It's a 68 with a .88 open scroll housing. Most guys, seriously, an eBay HX35 with a 12 centimeter housing runs fine on a stock truck. They're good for towing, they're good for driving. You really won't have any problems with them. Definitely worth doing. I do have some videos on those. Another thing is exhaust systems. Go get yourself a 4-inch and let them breathe. This is an old Diamond Eye system that I've had on the truck for quite a while. Chances are pretty good that if you can find a Diamond Eye, it's worth getting. Another thing is, if you're going to be towing a lot, go get pillar gauges. I have Trans Temp, Pyrometer, and Boost in Casper. I've had these gauges in it since I was in college, and frankly, it was one of the best purchases I've ever made. So make sure you've got good batteries in it. AC Delco 60G glow plugs, they are worth it. This truck starts every time in the cold and never has a problem. These are marine injectors that were built by Chris Stratton. They're actually very similar to the ones the Leroy Diesel sells. So if you need injectors or you notice a loss in power or heavy smoke on startup, change glow plugs first, check your lift pump pressure. But realistically, if it doesn't clear up, change your injectors because there's a pretty good chance that they've expired. Injectors on these are supposed to be serviced every 80,000 miles. I'm not really sure that anybody actually follows that at this point. So another worthwhile thing is definitely do a 2000 water pump and HD fan and clutch assembly. That's all I did on this was a Delco system, and it's been cool and running fine since. So there's some quick tips and tricks if you're looking to just buy one of these and make it a work truck and you don't want to make it a race truck. You will want to go ahead and get a tune. If you do a turbo swap, it's worth doing. If you're not a fan of turbo swaps, what you can do is go ahead and just buy a wicked wheel and a spool stick from Leroy and just run it at 8 pounds of boost. Get a small optimized stock tune with an upgraded upper intake like you see here, that's KB diesels, and away you go. So I hope that some of that information can help you guys out. I've talked about this in the past. Those are all the worthwhile upgrades I would do. Seriously, these are not a rocket science truck, but you do kind of have to treat them like a race car. So I appreciate everybody's support and for tuning in for all this, and I hope to see everybody in the future at an event, a race, or something, and keep on making 6.5s a little bit greater once again. Thanks.